Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. We're live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, across the country and the world on the I Love CVille Network. We're presented by Yes Realty Partners. We'll say it again. Yes Realty Partners. You can find them online at yesrealtypartners.com, a trusted name in the game. Judah Whitcower, studio camera. Quinton Beckham.
Good morning.
Lee Elberson.
Morning.
How are you guys?
I'm good. Lee, you're looking a little tired today.
I may or may not have stayed up playing cards till 2 a.m. last night, but feeling great.
Were you the big winner?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, went out in... Yeah, I do okay in cards.
How, can I ask how the big winner does? In a night out playing cards?
Well, when we play...
These are friendly stakes, right?
Yeah, it's Quinton usually comes in with 10 grand and loses it in
Right.
famous fashion.
Right.
No, it's $20 and here and there, so...
The last time we played, actually, I should have won, but I was so excited to see people that once I had a pile of chips, I just gave it all away again.
Yeah?
And then I had to
You were
leave.
talking to everybody?
I was just so enamored of being back in that space.
Yeah.
It's nice to be back around a card table. It's nice to be around a set table, talking with two really smart guys, one who put a fantastic agenda together.
I don't know, but we'll find out.
It's good.
Complex agenda, I would say.
And
Yeah.
excited to go to the barbecues this weekend and do all that sort of thing.
Well,
which brings me to the first bit of trivia.
Okay.
We're having a little bit of trivia.
We're ready.
Very first national charcoal briquette company. Who was it? And how did it get started?
Wow. I have no idea. That's out of my purview, out of my lane. Is it still an active company?
It's still an active company, although the name has changed.
Okay.
I must have probably started somewhere in, you would think Kentucky.
You would say Kentucky?
Yeah. Kentucky's also a Commonwealth. I don't know if you
You
knew
don't
that.
think
but
it would start more toward the 13 colony side of things? Or charcoal is something a little down the road of the 13 colony?
I don't know. I would think it would be in some of the southern colonies. I don't know. Let's take what's the big charcoal company?
Isn't that the name of the brand? The big
It
brand?
started in Detroit.
Oh, it
Started in Detroit.
It
Okay.
Started in
down.
Detroit.
All right.
It started in Detroit. It started in about 1896. Henry Ford had started the first line of Model Ts.
Okay.
They were churning them out, and he partnered with a dude that got him a bunch of land and a lumber mill because all of the wheels were wooden wheels that they carved out, and he was left with all these chunks and bits and leftovers of the wood that was there, and it felt like a waste. And he figured out how to compress it and char it and resell it.
Huh.
Brilliant.
And his partner was a gentleman by the name of Edward Kingsford, after which the company was named. It started out selling as Ford briquettes, and now it is Kingsford.
Kingsford. That's the one I was thinking of. That's the one you always see.
It's still alive.
Oh yeah, that's the most popular one, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Marquise Johnson says, "Can I get a Clayborne shirt mailed to Hampton, Virginia?"
100%.
Literally
Absolutely.
just came in the feed right now.
Yes.
He sees you on the show often.
Look at this. Free prizes.
Get his
Yeah.
information. I would. Yes, definitely 100%. Just ask him what size he is.
What size are you, Marquise Johnson? And I will tag Clayborne on this feed.
Perfect.
For you. This guy's a very, very generous Santa Claus, Kris Kringle type. He says, absolutely, let's get the brand out in the 757.
Definitely. I got another trivia question.
Okay.
This one's maybe a little bit easier. Where and when was the first 4th of July celebration? Come on, Jerry, you should know this.
Where and when was the first 4th of July celebration?
Yeah.
It was nowhere close to the signing. It was much later.
I'm going to say it was it's got to be in the 13 colonies somewhere, right? Do you know the answer?
I don't know the answer.
I don't know. My history is so bad.
I've read about it, but I don't remember.
All right, so let's think about. I actually did know this even before I looked it up. Think about where and when it was the
Philadelphia.
When it was signed.
Okay, 1776.
Well,
July 4th, 1776 is when it was signed.
there were two signatures that day, but keep going.
Yeah.
So he's trying to give us some hints right here is what
Yeah.
he's doing. All right.
So,
Our
and Quinton's right.
patriotic-
You wouldn't celebrate that day because they still had more the documentation to go through. But that's the day they decided to celebrate. So they would obviously celebrate the very next year.
Okay.
So July 4th,
1777.
1777 in Philadelphia was the first 4th of July celebration.
Pretty
Interesting.
close.
Yeah.
You said Philly.
You know what? And we talk about John Hancock all the time, and there's a running debate about why his signature was so big. And most people say it was really huge because he was the first person to sign. It felt really blank, and nobody else was around that was going to sign. So he just used up all the space.
Wow.
I think I would have used up all the space too.
I don't doubt that at all.
You would have too. You would have too. Marquis
But
said
nobody
it's a
would have known
3X.
what my name was. My writing is so bad.
Your writing's not that bad.
They would have thought, what's that squiggle?
So it's going to be a trivia, informative version of Real Talk. We're also going to answer this conundrum, or try to tackle the conundrum: schools and density, housing, and schools. They go hand in hand, or do they?
Well, it feels like there's a bit of a Mexican standoff here. So I think we need more housing. We need more affordable housing, and to do that, you have to build more houses. And so a lot of that plays into density. This feels very reasonable. And yet at the same time, if you build more houses, families move in, and there's more kids in a school system that's already operating at or above capacity, where do they go to school? And how do you fix that? And that also feels very reasonable. So I'm curious, how we get around this Mexican standoff of more housing versus more and better schools.
It's a great question
This is
without
right
a
up your
simple
alley.
answer.
CEO of Clayborne.
And so I wanted to bring him in so that
Yeah.
when I say really stupid things about this, he can be like, no, wait, you're wrong, and fix that, since, we're being recorded.
I would say, well, I don't think I will have any simple answers. We discussed this a little bit last night, and it's a very complicated issue. So I think it's a great question, Quinton.
And
is
I
raising.
think it's also interesting, when we build really great schools, when we create really great schools, housing springs up all around it.
Crozet is
because
a great example.
there's some really good examples of that all across the country. And so where and how do we balance those two? And where does that money come from? And how do we get it? And, we've spent, mostly last night, but about a week now, we've sort of been chatting about this. The first time I played poker at his house, but might have been some alcohol, so I'm not sure if we really remembered any details. We've been trying to figure out how schools and construction and everything is funded in Virginia, and it's really complex. You can't just read and go, oh, well, it comes from this, because it's not like that at all.
We're going to give an example of that today. I'm going to try to go through it in my little mind and piece it together, and I couldn't reconcile it last night, which is why
We
Quinton
went
was
back
asking
and
this
forth
question.
and back and forth,
Yeah.
trying to,
I would encourage anyone to do a basic Google search and try to figure out how Virginia public schools are funded. That's
Start
a
there.
conundrum in its own right there.
Yeah.
Start there.
And I just
Drew-
got to warn you, if you're commenting and you give us a one-sentence answer, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, because it's not a one-sentence answer. It's really complicated.
Drew Skursky is watching.
Swirsky.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my really good friends. He's an agent with Keller Williams in Alexandria, Kingstown.
Yeah, he's watching the
Yep.
program. The co-captain of the Lee Elberson fan club, Cindy Elberson.
She's a big fan of yours, Jerry.
is
We know
watching
that.
right now. I'm a big fan of Cindy Elberson as well.
Yeah,
So,
you stepped into that last time, didn't you, between captain and co-captain?
we just called them co-chairs.
Co-chairs, yes,
we went
right.
Diplomacy.
Yeah.
We went diplomacy. His wife, of course, the other chair in that co-chair dynamic. So, gentlemen, I'm following your lead here.
Do we have any more trivia questions, or are we ready to dive in? Or?
So since we are supposed to talk about real estate, I thought I'd spend 10 minutes and talk about local real
Great.
estate.
Please.
And maybe not even 10 minutes, but everybody's talking, we're low inventory, yes, that's still true. High prices, yes, that's still true. And if you look at the numbers where we just closed out May, there's still a lot of prices climbing, and it seems like this big growth. Now remember, those are contracts that were ratified 60 to 90 days ago, and we're just seeing the final sales prices become public, so it's more of a rear view look. But if you look at all of the current things in terms of list price versus sale price, and I want to give credit to Keith Davis from Nest, who helped break this down in a way that was really easy to see.
Okay.
And I didn't ask to steal it from him, but I am going to steal his knowledge. The amount of homes that are selling for 105, 110% of list price is dropping dramatically. And so I'm really expecting to see, as we move through, that we've already sort of finished the skyrocket climb.
Okay.
Are things going to drop? No, there's still not enough inventory. There's still a really high demand, but you're probably not going to see things where they're selling for 20 and 30% over list price unless they are exceptional homes.
So it's cooling off, is what you're saying.
I think that there is still blood in the water, but the feeding frenzy is not so frenetic.
Okay.
I think he's saying it's stabilizing slightly.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So if you were
So-
apprehensive to buy because housing prices were insane, now you could say, I could maybe start looking again.
The counter to that would be, it's always a good time to buy because you're locking in your overhead for 30 years.
It's always a good time to buy.
Yeah.
So let's set
because
that
the rents
aside.
are going up 5% every year. You
But-
negotiated a sweetheart of a deal.
Yes, definitely.
That's the difference.
It's always a good time to buy versus renting. As a general rule, people's individual circumstances make that decision, which is why you need a trusted counselor. But I feel like we still have a very strong market. The value's not disappearing. I don't expect any sort of drop. We still have a low inventory. We still have a lot of buyers. But when we're putting new homes on the market that are priced well, that are really good and put together homes, instead of getting 10 competing offers, most of the time we're seeing 2 to 4.
Okay.
And so, the rocket is still way up in the stratosphere, but it has sort of leveled out a touch.
Very nice. I'm curious to see this. This is what I'm curious to see. And Michael Beckham is giving you props.
Hey, Mike.
Is that your...
Who's that?
That is my nephew.
Your nephew is watching
He
the
is
program.
in sunny, bright, and really hot Arizona.
One of your favorite agents, Nikki Chambliss,
Hi, Nikki.
is giving some props and liking the show. I think the other co-captain is watching now.
Alex is watching. Yeah.
Alex, hello.
She told me good luck before I was taken off and to tell you guys hi.
Brian Monahan, hello. All right, so I'll throw this to you. And I'm going to play yin to the yang.
Okay.
Okay? For the sake of talk show. Okay, for the sake of talk show. Joffrey Woodruff, Code Building, opening very soon. Joffrey Woodruff, $125 million, Data Science School, coming soon to the University of Virginia.
Yep.
Okay? Dexcom, Dairy Market, bringing people from outside the area to Dairy Market to that headquarters. It's going to be one of their HQs.
Yep.
Right? Willow Tree cannot find office space fast enough to fill the hiring demand to meet their customer demand that they have. So why I'm bringing these up to you, you know where I'm going to go with this, the sake of a talk show. We have major employers bringing folks from outside the area and giving them high dollar jobs in Charlottesville. They're going to have to live somewhere, and they likely will erode some of that housing stock.
Correct. But let's be clear. The pandemic is its own thing that had an enormous quick spike. The steady climb that we've been experiencing since 2009 is because of just the things that you're bringing up. We've lived graciously in this steadily growing economy in our local area that has attracted more people, attracted more jobs, brought in families from out of the area at a constant and steady pace, increasingly eating up our inventory and increasing the demand on housing. So that we've always been on this road. That's not new. The only thing that was new was the speed limit went up to 85 during
true.
the pandemic. Now we're back down to 55. So we're still headed in the same direction. We're still in desperate need of more housing. We're still in need of housing to continue the economic growth that we've enjoyed, and we need to look at that across all the spectrums.
When you say housing, you're including a spectrum of affordable housing and housing?
He's talking housing in general.
Housing in general. So whether it's rentals, there's several going up along, is it Berkmar?
Yep.
There's several that are going up along Berkmar. We need rental housing, we need single family, we need condos, we need townhomes, we need all price ranges, and you need more affordable housing, and you also need affordable housing with a capital A.
Our developers aren't necessarily incentivized to go for lower value housing, right? There's no incentive to go for affordable housing.
Well,
So
Why wouldn't
affordable
you
with
just?
a capital A, let's be clear.
Okay.
If you're talking capital A affordable housing, that requires government assistance. There is no way in the current state of affairs between average median income and cost of housing, like forget anybody making any money, just the cost to buy a chunk of land, connect it to utilities, and put a decent house on it. There is no room in there without government assistance, without government input, to make capital A affordable housing. It requires it across the board.
Developers are incentivized by local government if they want approval for said development project. So if developers go in with a project and they proffer or they allocate a portion of that development for affordable, they're much more likely to get approved for their project. So there's that incentive.
Okay.
The board and the council is trying to push that forward. Now, what we describe or call affordable housing is different for everybody.
Which is
The
why you'll hear
problem-
me say all the time, we
That's
need
the
more
problem.
housing, we need better housing affordability, and we need more affordable housing. Those are three different categories for me.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you just said there. You should explain those dynamics, though, because
So-
they're very similar.
When we see the $1 million development, it's a housing development. It's 22 homes. They're going for 900 to 1.2 million apiece. They do nothing for affordable housing, but they do help with housing affordability.
That's right.
So if you're looking at the house in Belmont that 3 years ago sold for $275 a square foot and today is selling for $400 a square foot, it's because we're bringing in jobs that could have afforded that $800,000, $900,000 home, but there's none of those for them to buy.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you're pushing them into a lower price point where they're competing in a way where folks in that median income bracket that could have afforded that house can't compete with them.
That's why any new housing is good for housing affordability. Any
You are-
housing at all.
Yeah, if there's only one road to race on, my Porsche is going to beat your Jeep.
Depends on if it's paved or dirt, but yeah.
I'll bet you. Now scurry around a little bit maybe,
Right.
but probably.
Yeah. So you're saying there is no instances in which building very expensive homes is bad for housing affordability?
I don't think so.
In our current market,
Yeah.
in our
And-
current market, think about vaccines. How many vaccines were on the market? How many were we doing because we were desperate?
That's a good
We're
comparison.
kind of desperate.
I would not say that is a fair. Let's go back to the
Why don't you like that
Try-
comparison? Any vaccine
two
for
very
any vaccine-
complicated systems. I think we could deduce this just with housing. So again, I don't know anything about housing. This is why I can make a good argument because I have no idea what I'm talking
why
about.
this will be a
So
good run
let's take a small community of homes.
Okay.
Okay, and you put in $3 million homes, like you said, or you put in a row of new $1 million homes. On average, does that raise the median housing prices of the surrounding houses?
That,
Generally, yes.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a comp.
Less than you think.
Right.
So
Okay.
if you're saying if I've always owned my $300,000 house and you build a $500,000 house next door,
It's going to impact your
is it
house.
going to impact my taxes? Yes, not as much as you think.
Yeah.
And it's not immediate, it's over time, you will see it increase.
What will affect my taxes is when I stay in my $300,000 house, but my neighbor who's lived there the same time sells theirs for $400,000. It's not the new build $1 million house. It's the increasing price of the people that don't stay in the neighborhood. That will have a bigger impact on my tax assessment than will the new housing.
That's the true comp.
Okay.
One thing that I see where you're going with this. You're
Yeah.
basically saying if you build a bunch of $1 million homes and these $1 million homes sell, how are you going to say it's going to impact affordability when you just made an argument that it's going to cause all the homes around it to uptick in value? So that's what you're saying.
Yes.
I will take it a step further than that. Are you considering the real estate tax revenue that comes from the sale of those $1 million homes and where that real estate tax revenue can be allocated to and what it could be allocated for?
Yeah, I think it's a small percentage, it's 1% or something, right?
Let me go back to your
Yeah.
original. I'm going to struggle, but I'm going to try and use your original analogy.
Okay.
So we're in the 10-home neighborhood that's $300,000, and everybody there has a job where they're at the median income.
A 10-home neighborhood, each
10-home
home is
neighborhood.
$300K.
Each home's $300K.
Okay.
Every year, 2 of those homes go on the market.
Okay, we're with you.
Now a new company comes in,
Okay,
and they bring in people that are at twice that median income.
okay.
Where are they going to live?
Well, I mean, they're going to find somewhere to live.
Would you rather build them a $600,000 home next door, or would you rather displace the people in the $300,000 homes that don't want to sell?
And see, that literally is happening right now.
Yeah.
And why are that? And I just gave you some examples of how that's
Now
happening.
that's
Dexcom,
super
code building.
super simplification.
Yeah.
That literally is happening right now. UVA's hiring more people.
Yeah, I see your points.
And the people
Yeah.
that were struggling and getting close to affording the $300,000 home are now completely out of the picture.
Well, they're not out of the picture. They're just probably driving from Waynesboro.
I'm
or
dealing with
Louisa
his.
or
I'm
Fluvanna.
dealing with his 10-home
Yeah.
neighborhood. What do you want?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're out of the city
Right.
of Charlottesville picture. That's
We're like adopting the flat neighborhood thing.
Yeah.
Everything else is just an edge to
Yeah,
follow.
I'm a physicist, so I think about everything in a vacuum, and so are you. So you know where I'm coming from. But I see where you're.
We could also go to hydrodynamics.
and then we would lose everybody.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear about quantum field theory in this.
That's
so
why any new additional housing is good housing.
In our current system, as stressed as our system is, yes, there's no downside to more housing because people are not finding housing at all income levels.
right. Over time, here's maybe this is a tangent to this. Over time, are you always going to see for the growth of the community a gradient where the most expensive houses are centered in the center of Charlottesville, and then it just gets cheaper
think so.
as you go
Well, that's
outside
not
the
what we're
radius?
experiencing now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The most expensive houses are just outside the urban ring.
They're in Albemarle
right
County,
now.
by
In
and large.
Albemarle
Yeah.
County now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's not expensive ones, but if
Okay.
we're talking like per capita and density, most of them are in Albemarle.
It's an Albemarle.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have hard numbers to prove that, so
No,
if
no, no,
somebody
you're
looks it up
100%
and proves
right
me
on that.
wrong, anecdotally, if you pull up,
I'd say the most expensive pocket of housing is going to be Keswick or that Ivy, Farmington, Boar's Head area right there. You also got a nice little pocket
don't know.
right there off of Barracks Road.
Because it happens in bigger areas, right? Happened in the Bay Area, happens in Houston, that as something grows, obviously those are extreme examples, you displace people farther outside of the city limits.
Elena Mangione said hello to both you guys.
hey, Elena,
Oh, she was fun. Tell her
Hi,
so.
kids.
So, is that, okay, so that's not happening in Charlottesville, you're saying? We're not
I don't
creating
think
that
we've seen
gradient?
that like you've seen it in a lot of urban centers. So
Okay.
if your comparison is Manhattan, we haven't seen that push of price growth inside the city in the same way that you've seen in Manhattan, where the center of town becomes so competitive, so sought after, that the prices just skyrocket. So to give the city credit, whether this was by design or happenstance, a lot of the housing has not gone as high as it could have
Okay.
In the heart of town.
in the heart of town.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair.
I think we've reached a critical threshold that
Yeah.
that the pandemic really pushed us forward on, that was always coming. This is not new. I want to be clear about that.
Just got magnified.
It
Accelerated.
just got accelerated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get to these comments that are coming in here. Before we do, Snook, Councilor Lloyd Snook, earlier this week made the comparison of the city of Charlottesville to Palo Alto, and how if we don't make some major changes immediately, Charlottesville will become Palo Alto soon, and it's going to impact us from a diversity standpoint, from an affluence standpoint, a wealth standpoint, a quality of life standpoint. I think he said that in Monday's meeting. And it was in regards to the Planning Commission, CVille plans together, and the upzoning potential that's down the pipeline in the city of CVille. What do you think about that? I'm curious on what you think too.
I think there's so many competing things. There's no way out of this except to build more houses, which is how we got to this topic today. Because more and more, so we build more houses, we move families in. Where do their kids go to school, and how do they go to school, and where does that come from? So I think there's a lot of competing ideas. Real estate taxes are going up because home values are going up. Some of that money goes to build schools. But how does it get there, which is what I was trying to figure out. Is there a direct linear correlation? And there's really not that I can find. And so how do we get to that point?
Yeah, I'm
Totally
curious
pivoting
about
away from your question.
Palo Alto. You know, that's where my wife is from.
Yeah.
Yeah, she lives,
That's why I brought it
her
up.
parents live just outside of that. When Palo Alto was growing, didn't they make the same argument that you're making right now, Quinton? Oh, the only thing to do is to build more houses, and they ended up in that situation. So I would ask, what are we going to do differently that we're not going to end up like that? Maybe that's Lloyd's inference there, is that, yeah, unless we do something differently, we'll end up exactly like them. So what would we do
So
differently?
I do think, one, I don't know enough about Palo Alto, and so I would push back the same way you did against my original analogy. So I don't know that that's a fair comparison.
Okay.
Because you're already talking about an entire system that's so completely different. And I don't know enough about it to really answer that. What I do think
We should ask Alex. She's watching. Alex, any insight on Palo Alto and the similarities to Charlottesville?
She's like, I'm an engineer, not a real estate agent. This is why we're talking to Quinton. He's the expert.
I do think what we've done up to this point for affordable housing has not met the goals that we've stated.
Yeah.
And so we do need to look at different things on how that's going to work, and that's got to happen at the municipality level. It's got to happen in local government. There's no way around it. So city council, board of supervisors, all the folks that participate in that have to really get a consensus for who do we want to be moving forward. And you may not love what's happening in your neighborhood right out of the gate.
You're talking about the zoning changes.
Yeah.
Well, Neil Williamson, welcome to the broadcast. Alex, I'm going to get to your comment here in a matter of moments. For me, the only thing that I can see that Charlottesville can do, and Alex, I do think that Charlottesville is a little landlocked, only being 10.2 square miles and no real way to expand. I see only building up or changing the zoning. And I'm all for, I'm all for housing. I'm on the housing supply chain as much as anybody here, right? Mm-hmm. My response to this, and it's a great segue for you, or a great toss to you, is if we're going to build the more housing, I just want to make sure all the infrastructure is there to support the added density.
But now we're back to the chicken and the egg.
That's the thing. We're back to the chicken
Right.
and egg.
We're back to the chicken and the egg. I have a really inappropriate refrigerator magnet that talks about the chicken and the egg.
What's the inappropriate?
Don't.
Yeah, we're not
he
doing
told me about it yesterday. Yeah, just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, how do you get to one without the other, and where does your priority have to lie? And a lot of our arguments against building houses, when you talk about infrastructure, have to do with roads, traffic density, and schools. Roads and traffic density, most studies show that increase in zoning actually reduces traffic because you have less pile up coming in.
Yeah, and will you also...
Most of traffic
more
is not
public
coming,
transportation.
your local traffic neighborhood is not coming from your neighborhood, it's coming from the neighborhoods that have to get past you to get to their jobs.
That's true.
So all the studies on increased density say it reduces traffic.
Yeah. I'm less worried about the traffic. I'm more worried about the schools, police, EMT, fire, rescue. I agree with you on the traffic.
Yeah, let's focus. I think we can focus on schools because Quinton and I came up with some numbers. So I'll throw the first number out. So
Your better half is making a point.
Oh, okay. What's her
we
point?
gotta get Alex's point.
All right.
Okay, because I want to make sure she's included. She says it will help that Charlottesville is not as landlocked as Palo Alto. Charlottesville can continue to grow while Palo Alto eventually hit other big towns in the Bay. I will play devil's advocate with her, and Alex, play devil's advocate with us, please. It makes for a good talk show. Where exactly can Charlottesville grow to? You're saying up. Outside
It's gotta
of-
be up and out.
seven surrounding counties.
It's
gotta be up and out.
It can't grow into the counties. It's not going to take over Albemarle. Charlottesville's 10.2 square miles. Albemarle's not going to give up its land so Charlottesville can expand.
Well, the city itself doesn't need to expand, but housing is fluid and can cross lines.
Sure.
Yeah,
So
I'm with Quinton here.
housing is fluid and can cross lines, and we're
That
in
real
it.
estate tax revenue is not going to go to the city. It's going to go to the county if it crosses lines.
And the students that have to be educated and the fire departments that have to serve them will be in the counties as well.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So I
Fair point.
I think we're
Arguing semantics.
we're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
Every place that has a Charlottesville postal designation,
Yeah.
when we're talking Charlottesville, let's leave the idea of the city behind. Does the city and the county need to coordinate a little bit? Sure. And do we need more than one solution? Sure, because we're kind of desperate, like we needed more than one vaccine. So I am interested in, if we build more houses, if housing values are going up, if taxes are greater, does any of that flow into building schools? And I sort of challenged him to try and figure that out. And I'm curious what you came up with.
It's not an easy problem to solve. So the first number I'll throw out is the national average for supporting a student in a school is you need $12,000 per student per year. So that's if we want to keep up with national average. So that's a good,
$12K per student per year in public school.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good number to just keep in your head.
$1,000 a month.
Yeah. So basically, if we add more students, we need to think about how are we going to come up with that money. So this is where Quinton and I started. So let's say you build a new house. Again, I think about things just incrementally. So if you build a new house, let's say in a popular neighborhood, let's say a new neighborhood coming up in Charlottesville, how much would the house sell for? On average.
Let's say it's $500,000 to be easy.
Yeah, 500.
We'll say 500,000.
Yeah.
500K. Okay. How much per year are we going to generate in property taxes?
Again, for sake of math, $5,000.
Okay, $5,000 per year. But how many students are going to be living in that home on average?
2.5.
2.5. Okay. So
Is that a rule of thumb?
2.5 is the closest average. It's really confused right now because we had so many people move back home.
Okay, 2.5.
okay. So if a new home is built,
Okay.
you need 12,000 times 2.5.
Yeah.
Jerry, real quick, what is that?
That's what, 30K.
Dude, good. My man's good.
Okay.
Good math.
Clayborne education, taught me well.
So-
Worth every penny, Clayborne education.
So we're thinking now, if you build a new home, you need 30,000 a year to support those students.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, we've got 5,000 from
The one house.
from the house itself.
Yeah. So you're running a 25K deficit that you got to find from somewhere.
Exactly.
Except that schools aren't only funded from real estate taxes.
Yeah.
Sure. You got
So-
the Virginia Lotto.
So according to
Federal,
the best,
state.
now we struggled with this last night.
Yeah.
People
But-
are chiming in on where schools
But the
are
best
funded.
we can figure out is you need real estate taxes fund 30% or a third. And so if you're needing 30,000, we need to generate 10 grand in real estate taxes. Yes, no?
I mean, that's
the best
based
I
on
could
what
find.
you're saying. Neil Williamson, how are schools funded? He's watching right now. He also have the CVille Weekly and NBC 29 watching you
So,
on the show.
So they're laughing at me.
No, they're
probably.
not laughing at you. They're probably going to interview you after this show right here.
So if you need 12 grand in Virginia, there's a median,
Sure.
and then the federal government picks up 40% of that,
No,
based on what I read.
I thought federal government was 10%. State was 40 and locality was
Okay.
45.
So
Yeah.
there's 50% state and federal.
Yeah. I think it's close.
Based on what I read, it feels like in places with super high property taxes, some of that money might flow into the state fund and move to other counties. There's some additions and subtractions to this 12 grand based on actual costs on the ground. If you have more special needs kids, that 12 grand might go up to 14. So there's a lot of variation in here. But we can't figure out where the other 50% comes from, is what we were struggling with. Localities can use sales taxes. It feels like you get a general fund that all of the local taxes pour into, and based on what's left, after they pay for police and fire, that's what's left to fund schools.
And I'll say, if you look up, they publish where public schools are funded. And in general, I think if you look at it after they're funded, it looks like about 45% comes from state, 45% comes from locality, and about 10% comes from federal government. As Quinton says, that is a big aggregate. That is a national aggregate. As you go to localities, it can change quite wildly. So we had a tough time piecing together in our locality where the rest of the money came from.
Grayson says you guys aren't considering the impact private schools have on alleviating the pressure on public schools from an enrollment standpoint with this conversation. Which is
We
a
do.
fair point.
I think that's a fair point, but I also think part of when we were talking about it, we're including this housing affordability and affordable housing thought and concept. And so we were really focused on public schools because it's the one place that if you live in the town, your kid can go without you having to write a separate check.
Yeah.
And so there is, when we talk about real estate values and school education being connected, we're not quite sure all the time how that connection works because it's not a direct funding connection. But some of it may have to do with access to private schools and how parents that are have more lucrative jobs can provide better support.
Sure.
And fund things for the schools that are not within their budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, with very few exceptions for independent private schools, or they usually called independent schools, you're looking at more affluent families. So somebody who's buying a $400,000 house is a lot more likely to be in public school. Somebody who's going to an independent school, those families are more likely buying higher value houses, $600,000 or $700,000.
I think that's a fair correlation. Grayson also says, as parents of two private school students, we often think that we're funding two different school systems. One where our kids go Monday through Friday, and one where our kids could go depending on where we live.
Yeah. We appreciate your service. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you're not knocking the hustle. That's a fair statement.
I get it. I feel like the more we've had this affordable housing conversation, the more we've knocked up against, okay, we need more housing and we need a lot more housing. Let's forget about lumber and how complicated it is to get in and who's going to finance it and what do developers need to make. Let's set all that aside for just a second. We need a lot more housing.
Yeah.
When we have a lot more housing, there's a percentage of people that are going to come in and live in those districts. Now they're going to school somewhere, so I don't know how that all works. They're going to come into those districts. Where are their kids going to go to school?
Yeah, and I think
that's a really safe question. It's a really fair question.
Yeah, and I think what Quinton and I decided is that, I mean, the public schools are funded somehow, and certainly we can figure that out at some point.
We got a guy that can figure this out for us that's watching.
Yeah.
Free Enterprise Forum's Neil Williamson, and he's got this for both you guys. And then I'll throw this to you, literally for you.
Yeah.
Okay, Neil, can you give us how Albemarle County schools are funded? If you could give us that would be huge, Neil Williamson. He says, Lee, Albemarle County, first he says, Lee, how does class size impact school capacity?
Okay.
And then he responds for you. Albemarle County Public Schools serves nearly 14,000 students in preschool through grade 12 in Albemarle County, Virginia, the sixth largest county in the area in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's a diverse locality of 726 square miles in the heart of Central Virginia, a blend of primarily rural, so that's from the Albemarle County website. So how does class size impact school capacity, and then continue from there?
Yes, so I'm going to partially answer that question.
Okay.
So, I think once you figure out how they're funded, the next question, so what you're thinking of is, okay, we were adding students, the property taxes and revenue generated in the locality is sufficient to increase the class size. Adding one student is not going to change the capacity. When you build a big neighborhood, if the school is already at capacity, this is where Quinton's talking about you get the chicken and the egg problem. When you're at capacity, you can't just throw $12,000 for another student. You need a new building, that's going to cost millions. You need more staffing because at some point, once the class size hits capacity, the education is going to degrade sufficiently. The problem may end up solving itself because maybe more affluent families are going to decide to put those students kids in private school, but I think that's not going to solve the problem completely. You hit a point at which the school system is going to need several $1 million in order to take the growth of the new neighborhood. Who covers that several $1 million? Excuse me.
Todd Rath for both you guys. Property taxes are also on commercial properties which have no children. Todd Rath continues. Also, best way to keep taxes down, second homes. Look at what Nelson County did in Wintergreen with taxes on second homes. That's from Todd Rath. Marquise Johnson to Lee Elberson. Where are you going to put another school in Charlottesville? You can barely put up more schools. You can't get another high school in Charlottesville, Virginia. We are landlocked. Then he says, Murray High School, Jackson P. Burley, and the county office building could have been knocked down, and that's land right there, but the city had to give it to the county in the annexation agreement. James Watson adds, Albemarle, 95% zoned for rural development. Lots of old money not wanting density. There's no roadway infrastructure to bring high volumes of people in from the rural counties in Albemarle County. James Watson, anywhere you guys want to go on any of those topics? QB, what's on that big, beautiful brand of yours?
I think it's obvious that the way we've been doing things is not keeping up. It's
fair.
not keeping up for housing, and it's not keeping up for education. And so I suppose my point in all this, we've had so many conversations about, in the last 14 months, we've had so many conversations that are, I think, really good conversations about equity, about affordability, about homeownership and community. And this leads us to more conversations about community, healthcare, and jobs. And I think I keep going back to this idea that we just went through a year where we had this huge shift in how people lived that allowed a degree of flexibility that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. Can we capitalize on that? And so as we talk about housing, do we have an opportunity to have more housing further out? We all agree 95% of Albemarle being marked rural in the way that it's silly. The 5% that's set for development includes commercial.
And crappy lots.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at this point, if it's going to hold a house, I'm for it. So
I'm just saying not all 5% can be developed.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So
Fair.
we know that what we've been doing is not working. Well, Neil can give a whole dissertation on how the proffer system and affordable housing programs that we've had haven't met the goals
For sure.
that they were set, no matter how many times they've been tweaked. So we know none of this is working. Is there a role for virtual education? If buildings are the big stopgaps, and we've got a lot of money flowing into the state through the CARES Act and other things to help catch up students, if buildings and land are the issue, are we underplaying the value of some of the virtual education options that are available? Is there room
See,
to
that's
better
a great
use
topic
this?
right there.
And I'm not the expert.
No, but that's
I,
a hell of a topic right there. That's going to piss off some parents, though. But
And
that's a hell of a topic.
I can remember, I'm old, but I can remember, and where I grew up, when we went from 9 months schooling to year-round schooling, because even though it was a little more cost in staffing and electric bills, it was a lot less cost than building whole new schools.
Right. And I bet that was a big deal.
And it was a nice stopgap to give us time in our areas to build
More schools.
More schools.
Yeah.
Do we have a virtual option that's very much like that now?
So he's basically saying this, and I don't want to assume, so this is why I'm trying to put this in a very tight nutshell, and then it's a perfect.
And I feel like he's
built.
Whenever he does this, you know he's got
a point
stuff
ready to be made. Look at Lee Elberson right here. Can you get the one shot on Lee? He's got something percolating on his brain.
This
right
is
here.
the Lee equivalent of $1 million.
This is
$1 million. Yeah.
I'm sitting on a full house and they think I got a pocket pair. That's what he's saying right
See,
there.
you know what you're doing, yeah.
All right, so this is what I'm going to throw what he said in a nutshell, then he's going to talk. Do we alleviate the school enrollment crunch by encouraging more students and their parents to go virtual or a hybrid in-person and virtual to alleviate the capacity issues? Perfect for you.
This is a thing you softball where I'm going to try to knock this out of the park, but I might bunt it. So I think you're talking about major institutional changes,
Yeah.
and we know that in education, those are very difficult to do. It got accelerated last year to have to do virtual. We only did it because we had to, and they proposed going virtual, Albemarle County schools and city schools into next fall, and it was met by tremendous blowback. Not just on the parent side, they want their kids to physically be out of the house in the school systems, but also from the teachers. It's very difficult to teach a hybrid class. It's much easier to do 100% virtual or 100% in person. Hybrid is very difficult. So you actually had some teacher blowback there. Theoretically, it does alleviate it. If you go to year-round school and you do some sort of hybrid structure where you say, you're only going to be in school 50% of the time, but we're going to do it year-round, and so students actually will get probably about 70% of the time in person as they are now, and then they get quite a bit more virtual. So that might cover the learning loss. We do know that there's tremendous learning loss if you're learning virtually, so you just factor that into it. And so that might double your capacity, right? If you just go 50-50, right? Now you have double capacity in the school systems.
That's a big deal.
That is tremendous infrastructural changes for staffing, for one. You're basically going to probably have to increase your teachers by 50%. Where are we going to find 50% more teachers?
Okay.
You're going to probably have...
You could find more teachers if you can pay them more.
Yeah, and if you're doing it virtual, then you can leverage, you don't have to leverage teachers in the county, you can leverage them from all over the state, maybe.
From all over the globe.
All over the globe. You might want to do it state just because of the way we talked about, it's also the way it's funded, right?
Okay.
You might want to keep it within the state,
Okay.
So
he's basically saying you could have a Fairfax teacher teaching fourth grade to anyone in the Commonwealth of Virginia that's in fourth grade.
yeah, and there is some benefit to having multiple teachers and not having just the same teacher for something. So there is actually some benefit to that. So I think that is a very interesting proposition.
Helen Dragas, baby.
Huh?
Remember Helen Dragas? Board of Visitors got kicked off the board because she was pushing Coursera This was about 10, 15 years ago. She said University of Virginia should go digital with its curriculum. And the Board of Visitors was like, let's get this Helen Dragas off the Board of Visitors ASAP. Now Helen Dragas looks like she's a soothsayer.
Have you used Coursera?
I have not used Coursera.
I'm taking a course right now. It's tremendous.
It's
all of our staff is actually doing Coursera courses. It's a pretty amazing platform.
She was pushing this 15 years ago for the university.
Yeah, she was a visionary.
A visionary.
Yeah.
And I think as I've been more deeply in this process, every solution that's brought forward has its drawbacks. But we're so far behind the curve. At what point does that dearth of housing, the dearth of affordability, the dearth of educational opportunity, at what point does that overcome some of the objections that we bring forward that stop us moving in any direction? I can remember growing up in management, and one of my best mentors used to tell me, the only thing worse than a bad decision is no decision at all.
Amen.
And so this deadlock that we're in, I'm just really interested in what are the ways we can promote that gets some movement, because until we start moving in a direction, it's just going to get worse, because we already are seeing that happen.
And Quinton, you said something earlier that I think is very important to note when you're trying to leverage virtual education. It's equity. We know 100% that virtual education is disproportionately higher learning loss for under-resourced students. So you have to...
Under-resourced means not great internet action, not great...
not broadband.
Also, home environment. They may be sharing a room. They can't find a spot in their room where they can just study.
Quiet
I have my own office, right? And if I had kids, they would have a separate office where they could study. That's not true for under-resourced students.
Or an adult following up on what they're doing, the actual work on their computer.
Right. So you would probably want to introduce a lottery system if you want to make it equitable.
So what I find interesting,
We got the funding numbers.
part of why this is high on my mind is because we have all this money flowing down to help catch up people. It's sort of restricted from building buildings, but we have a lot of federal money flowing in that can go to broadband. We have a lot of federal money that can go into buying
from the American Rescue
tablets.
Act?
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
You know, so there's where the resources lie, really promote virtual more than they do in person in terms of ease of use. And I'm just curious, at the state level, are there some opportunities there that we're in a place that we just need to access them, even if they weren't our first choice?
Do you guys want the Albemarle County school funding numbers from Neil Williamson?
Definitely.
Okay, Free Enterprise Forum. This guy's the real deal. Fiscal year 2021, Albemarle County Public Schools funding, 68.2% local,
Yeah.
28.1% state, 1.7% federal, 2% one-time funds. Then he includes the link with the source from the Albemarle County budget. He adds more for this discussion, and he's loving the conversation. From Albemarle County 2021 budget, the county shares 60% of the increase or decrease in available shared local tax revenues with the school board. Available shared local tax revenues are additional or reduced tax revenues that can be used for county and school division operations after subtracting any increases and adding any decreases in debt service, capital improvement program funding, City of Charlottesville revenue sharing, tax relief for the elderly, disabled tax funds, and any shared reserves for contingencies. Then he gives the exact specifics for Albemarle County.
Yeah.
So Neil, I'm curious, what's the total amount of their budget for a year? What's a fiscal year budget for the Albemarle County school system?
Do you want to get a ballpark?
Well, because
$12,000 times how many students?
He's got the total students here.
Yeah.
If it's 12,000 times 14,000, that's 168 million?
Yep. Wait.
14,000 students in Albemarle County schools. Do you want me to bust out the calculator, or is your
Yeah,
math
it's
already figured it out?
168 million.
Okay, you got it right?
I don't know.
I mean, you're much quicker than 168 million. That's right. Very nicely done, Beckham.
14 times 12 is 168,
Yeah.
and times 10 to the 6th.
So I'm curious what their actual budget was.
God, I freaking love this show.
Neil, I owe you.
What is-
179,806,625.
So a touch above the average.
So we're above the average, yeah.
by 11 million and change.
So I'm
Yeah.
always interested, like,
Well done.
we
1%.
talk a whole lot about political will. You need the political will to do things and the desire. So I want to give you another number, and the number is $2.3 billion.
2.3 billion.
Where does that number come from?
Tell us.
It's the value of hot dogs we purchased as a country in 2019.
Marquis says he loves the show as well. Thank you, Marquis. The value of hot dogs.
Hot dogs, most commonly barbecued food on the 4th of July weekend. This goes back to our trivia. $2.3 billion in hot dogs in 2019.
That's a hell of a lot of hot dogs.
It's a hell of a lot of hot
That's
dogs.
a lot of encased meat.
It's a lot of encased.
Don't get any money from me. I've had exactly one hot dog in my entire life.
One
Yeah.
hot dog. He eats the
Vegan. I eat vegan hot dogs.
No, you eat the what's the stuff you're trying to get me to eat? The crawfish?
Oh yeah, you're gonna eat some crawfish. Yeah. Well, Elena and I have a bet.
Elena can totally outdo you.
She says she.
My
can
money's on Elena.
Okay.
Maybe
I grew up in southern Louisiana. I mean, if she can peel faster than me, I would be surprised.
Okay. Kevin Higgins, how does this is a good one. And then we got to go to Todd Rath. And then we got to go to Grayson. Kevin Higgins, how does virtual education impact wellness for children? How does the county have a screening process to determine which children can handle loss of physical presence? Are virtual teachers trained to identify signs that a virtual student may need to return to the campus?
Good
All
questions. Yeah. Virtual education on average increases the likelihood of depression and anxiety by factor 4.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's just the parents.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, that's and yeah, I think we were thrown into this and we didn't have appropriate safeguards. Teachers weren't looking for signs of that because we didn't have any options. To their point, there is no system by which they can determine it. It would probably have to be self-reported, or you would have to have some sort of parental involvement. I'm not sure how to do that effectively to consistently test for mental health.
James says there's some kids who actually thrived in virtual, mainly high school age kids from his understanding, thrived in virtual learning.
About 5%, I think is the number.
5%
About-
thrive, 95% struggle. Good Lord.
Interesting.
Do you hear that?
5 to 10%, I think, is the number that I read it thrived. It's a small percentage.
That is demoralizing.
I think I would have done well in virtual. I got asked to leave so many school systems in California, and it just felt like
Why does that not surprise me?
virtual would have been the way.
This is a good one. Todd, lodging taxes, Todd Rath, for you. Lodging taxes are a huge, also in Nelson. Brings tons of revenue due to the open policy on Airbnb, VRBO type rentals. If Albemarle needs more tax revenue to support affordable housing, support vacation rentals for our great area that brings millions of visitors to our historic area, tourists go out, they eat and drink and spend and create more tax revenue for all of us.
Yeah. I certainly think, we sometimes talk about things on this show with a level of simplicity that is not respectful of how complex the topics are and how one thing affects 6 others and those 6 affect the one thing and go back and forth. And I really became completely aware of it as I started to dig into information on education and think about communities pushing back against more density because what'll happen to the school district, and other communities pushing for more density because there's no place to live, and they all are valid statements. Like nobody's being evil. They're saying really valid things, and at some point, we have to find the will as a community and some political will to push past these. We have, out of the 1,000 most richest people in the world, 575 of them live in our country. So we spend more on hot dogs in a year as a country than, our school budget. And so at some point, we have to reach this level of commitment that respects all of these things and finds where the funds can come from. And I think it's one of those things where we might have to do a little better job at setting aside our own personal percentage of gain. If we're still gaining in wealth, but I have to slow that down a little bit to help do this, I'm totally willing to do that. And I also live alone, so I can go drink tequila all night if I want to, much like he did. And
I can neither confirm nor deny those allegations.
let's call her.
Cindy Elberson is watching the program.
Yeah.
She's watching the program.
Cindy would not be very surprised by the answer.
She's very gracious. And you mentioned kids. Are those in your future?
Wow, this is really good.
Wow,
right
holy cow.
Right now they're focused on a trip that starts tomorrow to the Bay Area.
Yeah,
Right?
we're first time flying.
Bay
Vacation
Area.
Starts tomorrow. Good segue. I love that.
You like
Yeah,
that?
it's perfect.
It's very
You're such a
romantic
good
in the
host.
Bay Area. Very romantic in the Bay Area. Those
So,
suns-
a comment from Eric
those sunsets.
LaFontaine. You appreciate that moniker. Broadband. Maybe in Charlottesville you can get And Cindy says, of course I'm watching, Lou. Eric LaFontaine, broadband. Maybe in Charlottesville you can get high speed, but the southern end of the county where he actually lives, around Scottsville, broadband is almost impossible. Firefly is contracted out. Some areas might get it in the next couple months. Other areas 4 to 6 years from now. Where I live, you barely get 10 Mbps, and our line is grandfathered in. If I get a new line now, I would get maybe 5 Mbps. Can't get anything else except CenturyLink now, and they hardly work. So that's to his point about virtual school not being possible in southern Albemarle County.
5 megabits per second is not sufficient for a student to be actively engaged in virtual school, even if it was healthy for them.
Could you even stream Netflix at 5 megabits per second?
You can. Netflix requires you to have at least 3, but that 5 is probably a
bare minimum
for interaction.
Yeah.
And that's Albemarle County.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Well, there's a limit to the trunk lines. So I have Comcast on my block. My friends and neighbors all have Ting.
Ting is the
and
best.
I can't sign
Ting
into
powers this network. We
Ting
love you, Ting.
Ting will not sign me up because they're committed to keeping their service level to everybody else, and the trunk leading to my street is not big enough to add more houses. Couldn't support the extra bits per second.
So
whatever.
until we get equitable broadband distribution and availability, virtual schools shouldn't even be something we consider rolling out. Because if we have such disproportionate equality, disproportionate, what's the word I'm looking for with broadband? When the resource people have better broadband than the non-resource people. I mean, that's pretty much what it's coming down to, isn't it?
There's inherent inequities that go with where you're able to live and access. Most of our inequities are about access.
Yeah.
After wealth.
Right.
Wealth is first, access is second. Access leads to wealth. You can see the combination of problems and how all that sort of rolls along. Okay, you said it way better than me. So we can't consider virtual school as the real deal option if it's really just the resource that have access to the broadband for virtual school. I think that's true and also dangerous because what most people will hear is the first part of your sentence. We can't consider virtual school, period.
Okay.
We have to understand with a lot of the services we're talking about, and this is just my opinion, this is my personal opinion, so it has nothing to do with any place I work. When you're in systems that are so strained, you must accept any options that relieve the strain. And because if you have people with a lot of resources and access, and they have no place to go, you'll never move the unresourced people with low access into that space.
I agree 100% with that.
So I think we're in an interesting time. We've had a lot of stuff change. We've had a lot of how people live change, and I really want us to capitalize on it as a city, as a county, as a country, as a state, to help spread some things out in a way that just wouldn't have even been possible to even think of. You know, if 5% of the high school population can move to virtual and be successful, is the way to identify them. And how many students is 5%?
Well, he said 5% of the public school population thought virtual learning was beneficial to their curriculum and how they learn.
800 students-ish.
Yeah, that's not many.
800 students is a subdivision. It's 800 more students. It's 400 houses.
I prefer I like your year-round argument better. I think year-round and a hybrid component where they're only in the school 50 to 80% of the time, and you determine that based on, I think when you try to go filter it, that's where you're going to run into issues. Do you have sufficient internet connections? What's the status of your students' mental health? Those are very complicated structures, and
the problem you're going to encounter with that, I'm playing devil's advocate with you for the sake of a talk show. The resourced kids, the kids that have parents with money, they're year-round. If it's hybrid, those parents are just going to find a way for those kids to learn in person somewhere else 5 days a week. It could be tutoring with Clayborne, the best of the business, Clayborne Education. It could be, ACAC.
Yeah, so
you see what I'm saying?
Equity argument.
Yeah.
Yes, okay,
argument.
right, yes. And this goes back to what Quinton said. We are 3 guys in the studio right now talking about problems that are so complicated that it would take 10 of us a year to try to come up with these structures. Yeah. So I think you're right. A lot of it should go back to equity. So how do you, if you use that as your lens, how do you create an equitable system? I think that the outcomes in general will be be better.
A lot of comments for you guys. I'm going to fire these away to you guys. This is obviously a hot topic. So Erin King, Western Albemarle High School's finest alum. We love when Erin King watches the program. She says the internet in Scottsville is the worst. There's never any service with CenturyLink. I could not rely on it to work from home. Some nights, including last night, I can't even stream Netflix. And she's watching from Scottsville, Virginia. She is the phenomenal brand manager and marketing director for Feast in the Purple Building on West Main. Very talented individual in the restaurant space. Todd Rath is really contributing to this show. He says, gentlemen, access is not wealth. A smart board of supervisors would have teed up your rural areas years ago, just like your surrounding counties have done. Tons of Fed money have gotten connectivity for broadband. And he's making a reference to Nelson County. Nelson County is going to have broadband for everyone. Albemarle County, one of the most affluent counties in the Commonwealth, is not. Marquis says Albemarle County is white old money and they don't believe in sharing, not even internet connectivity. That's from Marquise Johnson here. More comments coming in. Do you guys want to touch on those two first? Those three first. So
is one of the inferences there that we should make broadband a utility? In my hometown in Lafayette, Louisiana, my mom's she gets fiber internet from the city, and it's $40, $40 or $50 a month. And so it's part of the utility. Is that what they're saying? I've tried to make that argument that it should be a public utility. You're going to run into a lot of resistance with that, though. Why?
Well, I mean, once you start making a utility, then it's obviously then not a commodity. So businesses can't make money off it. So those businesses are going to oppose it becoming a utility.
Yeah.
And those businesses have a lot of influence and lobbying power.
But maybe places like Ting will just offer more. They'll say, we'll do 10 gigabits, right? But
I think there's a variety of ways to promote access that don't require making it a public utility.
For example?
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with running the lines. A lot of it has to do with making access to those places more affordable and supplementing what the counties have to spend to get there. So there's ways to do that, and we have a lot of funds flowing in currently that could help do that. He's right. Access and wealth do not have to be connected. They just are right now because nothing's been done to undo that.
Unfortunately.
I think there's potential to get access without wealth. It's just a lot easier if you have wealth.
Yeah.
That's like saying, can me and somebody without a car get from here to the middle of the university? Yeah.
It's just going to be a hell of a lot harder for you and take much longer.
With my car, I'm going to get there faster.
Yeah.
And maybe make a phone call on the way and be more productive.
Yep.
So those are interconnected.
Todd says utilize utility infrastructure to grow broadband. For example, Central Virginia Electric via Firefly, a private company. There are these Keith calls them the PPPs, the public-private partnerships that are out there. I mean, I see it as a utility. I don't see it being a utility anytime soon, unfortunately. I didn't know that about your mom.
And I don't know that I'm smart enough to have the answer for that. I just know it's possible. And I do think as we talk about the comprehensive plan and the land use map, it's been a big amount of discussion in the city. And that's not even the legal document. That's just sort of a suggestion. It's like the dotted white lines on the road. We kind of prefer you stay over here. But it's supposed to inform the zoning conversation. And I think we want to look at what's happening in our own neighborhood. That's why the land map generates so much discussion, because people look up their houses and go, oh, I'm in this zone. And it becomes the Hunger Games of housing. But I think there's an opportunity to look at that, but also step back and look at these bigger issues and find ways where there's partnerships between communities, private sector, and public to reach some of the goals that we would like to have and how we define ourselves as a community in a city. And I think that can be a telling moment.
What do you think of this comment that just came in from Grayson? Grayson says, have you gentlemen considered this is exactly what the folks that in charge want? Less housing means values go up, means those in power have their top item in their portfolio growing in price.
Yeah, I don't think
Very
for your
nefarious and backroom dealing comment.
I suppose if you put 1 million people together, there's somebody that feels that way. I think the vast majority of people probably are in support of the stuff that we're talking about. I like to believe humans are good people. Are we selfish sometimes? Sure. But as a general rule, we want children to receive a good education. As a general rule, I want homeless people to have places to buy homes, and I want the folks that work really hard at a job where they make $40,000 a year to afford a place to live that they can call their own. And I think that's true of the vast majority of our country.
I am going to push back for the sake of a talk show.
Please.
So I agree with you that some...
8 minutes left.
I have 8 minutes left. Okay.
Does he have to leave at 11:30?
I have to leave at 11:45.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree with you that given an intentional decision, a human being would likely choose for the greater good. I think subconsciously, humans take advantage of situations that they can, right? With, maybe not considering the impact to others.
Yeah, that's called capitalism.
Yeah. So let's say there's 3 pieces of food right here between me and Jerry. I'm going to look at him. I'm going to think, I'll grab 2 of them. That way I have one for later. Jerry will get 1, right? Like I'm going to do something to my advantage.
Pieces of food, I would say, let's cut this up evenly and give Lee 50%.
But he's so much taller; he deserves more calories.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, or let's say I don't. Let's say I don't.
Take Lee's food.
Let's say I don't see you there, right? I think it's a hungry hippos game. People are always going to take one thing extra unless you stop and make it an intentional decision. So that's what I would push back with, Quinton. So I think maybe that's more to his point, that people are just going to try to build wealth because they're trying to pass it on to their kids. And if you say, hey, did you know by doing that you are taking away from the under-resourced population, then they will make that decision. So we have to raise awareness, I think, first.
And let's assume that that's true. And I'm sure there's places where it is. But words are things you hang ideas on. And so I want to talk more about solutions than stops.
Got it.
Every time we throw out a sentence about something and we talk about how dead it is and how it's never going to go anywhere, we increase the likelihood that it's dead and it's not going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
And so I hear, and I don't want to disrespect the notion, and I know people that have run into these exact circumstances in their individual personal lives. I still want to talk more about the solutions because there are solutions, and they are possible to us if we breathe enough to do so. Yes, you're a hungry hippo and you're trying to get over your hangover, so any fatty food in front of him, you're going to take more of to try and offset.
What's your hangover cure? A greasy burger?
To try and
I don't
offset,
have a hangover, but yeah.
and slow down the alcohol consumption from whatever's still being absorbed in your gut. On the other hand, most of the time, if you drive by an accident on a freeway or on a road, the first people to stop are just the average people that were passing by.
Yeah, that's true. Rubberneckers.
Rarely is EMS the first person to offer aid. Almost never, in fact. So I want to speak to the idea that, yeah, we may have people that are bad humans. Most people are not.
I'm saying they're not bad. I'm saying
They're
they
gonna do
don't
what's best for
consider
themselves.
they don't consider other people unless, like, let's say you were to put up a wall and you wouldn't see anybody. Would anybody stop to think, I wonder if anybody's walking on the other side of that wall? It has to be in their face to stop.
Yeah.
But you're right. Let's focus on solutions.
Focus on solutions and understand that when faced with the person in need, when sitting across from him and thinking, oh my gosh, all this malnutrition, that's why I'm bigger than he is, you would share food until such a time as he was done.
Right.
And he said, no, I'm good. Most of the time when we see the last piece on a plate, it's 3 people at the table looking.
Mm-hmm.
And they wait for somebody to say, no, go ahead.
Yeah.
For me, it'd be like the last bourbon or the last beer. The last food, I'd let you have it, dude. I'm not.
That's why you're so lean and you're.
I'm not food motivated.
Yeah.
Neil says Albemarle County, 47,081 housing units, Lee, divided by 14,000 students, K through 12, equals 0.297 students per unit. You want me to throw that to you?
Wait, what was it?
It says Albemarle County has 47,081 housing units. Mm-hmm. So 47,081 rooftops.
Yeah.
That
Divided
also
by 14.
Divided by 14,000 students in Albemarle County schools.
Yeah, it's 2 point something, right?
0.297 students per unit. 0.297 students per unit.
Wait, what?
This math's got to be off right.
No, I think it's 2 point.
We shouldn't do complex math on a Facebook Live show.
Yeah, so anyway, 2.4. But yeah, okay. So
Jude, I want a chalkboard.
We
Now
could
you know
turn
why
that-
virtual education fails. You just saw an example.
We can turn this. You know what? Watch this. Do you want me to do that?
I don't think we need to do it. Quinton, what's the solution? What's the solution we're proposing here?
My proposed solution is that there's no single one. And so we have to embrace all of the options that are at us, and that we have to bring people together in a way.
That arithmetic does not add up, Neil Williamson. That does not.
And we
add
have
up.
to bring people together in a way where they are actually committed to the solutions as opposed to protecting their backyard.
Got it. So, yeah, in considering affordable housing and school systems, considering all options and saying we don't necessarily have to go back to the way it was, and we probably shouldn't because we know where that system is headed.
If we're committed to equity in the way that we talk about, yeah.
So what are you guys going to do? Let me add. We're talking the talk. How do you walk the walk at this table?
I don't have a map to get to where we have to go. I'm not smart enough, and I don't know all the ins and outs on how to get there. I do think each step forward is progress, and we need to make sure that we're not taking steps just because we can't see the distance to the goal. You got to keep moving forward. We have to make decisions. Neil did a great article on city council because they made a decision. You know, they were deadlocked for so long, and then he was like, woohoo, they chose something. Not choosing is worse than even a bad decision.
Yeah.
And so
Because your decision gets made up for you.
And that
we should
is
allow.
my problem, and I'm not going to say who.
We should allow our elected officials room to make some mistakes instead of expecting perfection. And we should be committed as a community to participate in those solutions if we really want to attain who we say we want to be.
You don't think we should give as much leeway to our elected officials, Jerry? I'm thinking that was the tone I heard in your
No, my
voice.
problem with what I agreed 100% with what he said. My problem is, and I'm not going to individualize anybody. Some of our elected officials want perfection, and perfection is the enemy to
progress.
Productivity and progress.
Perfection is the enemy to progress.
Yeah, so let's do something, even if it's not perfect, because he just very eloquently explained why any housing is good for the overall housing market in Central Virginia. It alleviates the crunch. So that's my problem with some elected officials. And I think we should give elected officials, we should hold them more accountable. We should ask for more proof of performance. We should run it more from a business standpoint. We should not have positions that are unopposed for 4 straight terms. And that's what we have right now in Albemarle. Okay? That's my biggest beef with local government. And local government, as Neil says, elections matter. This impacts us more than federal and Commonwealth government.
Right, as we saw with the way our schools are funded, clearly, right, we're getting 1% from the federal government. We need to pay attention to our elected officials. I'd be curious to hear your proof of performance argument after you've been elected to office.
Well, that's a different show.
Ooh,
right?
Send me this clip, Judah.
That's a different show. I could go on. I'm going to be in this chair until 1:45. We can talk as long as you guys want.
Do you want to end on another trivia question?
Yeah, I have one I'm going to throw out too. Go.
Okay.
I like this topic. We're ending. You have to leave?
I have to leave in 15 minutes. I have a meeting.
Okay. Can we cancel that meeting? I've persuaded you to cancel before.
I can't cancel this one. This one got pushed. This was my 10 a.m. meeting, and the rest of my day's booked.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
What was the last letter Thomas Jefferson ever wrote? Has to do with, it's 4th of July trivia. What was the last letter Thomas Jefferson ever wrote?
I don't know that. Your mom said she would vote for me.
Of course.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that.
Board of
Cindy.
Supervisors, Scottsville District.
I don't know.
Do you know?
I can make some reasonable guesses,
Cindy.
but I don't know the
The
actual
last letter that Thomas Jefferson ever wrote was declining an invitation to from the mayor of D.C. for the 50th anniversary celebration of the Declaration of Independence. He was sick. and dying, so that's why he couldn't go.
That's a hard trivia question.
And also, do you know when did Thomas Jefferson pass away?
At the end of his life.
Okay, I think this is true because I've heard this before. Didn't he pass away on the 4th of July?
Quinton Beckham, ladies and gentlemen.
There were only 2 past presidents that passed away on the 4th of July, and I don't believe he was one of them.
Okay. I could be mistaken there. So anyway, that was my trivia question.
What's the best land deal ever in the history of the United States?
The Louisiana Purchase.
Alaska, 2 cents per acre.
So that trumps the Louisiana Purchase.
It does.
Yeah.
How much?
Who was
Especially
the Alaska Purchase?
there was way more Russia. There was way more gold in Alaska.
2 cents an acre?
Okay, so you're saying 2 cents an acre, but how much revenue was generated from that? Have we generated more from the Louisiana Purchase than that? You're just talking about just pure
he's
land.
talking back end.
Not when you take away the price of penicillin in the public health service.
Eric LaFontaine, July 4th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, passed away.
Patricia Irby, July 4th.
Yep, he did. He
People
passed away.
answered your
And then there was one other past president that died on the 4th of July,
Didn't
or
James
founding
Mon-
father. I can't remember who it
Didn't
was.
James Monroe also pass away on the 4th of July? They were friends. Or Madison or Monroe, I think one of them also passed away minutes later after Jefferson.
So, dude, this is the power of social media. He outlived Monroe, just got put on the feed. He did die on the 4th. Dude, that's the thing about doing shows like this. You cannot be freaking wrong, or you're going to get called out immediately.
Unless
I
you're-
thought, but I'm glad, yeah, but I thought he did pass away on the 4th of July. You hear that on the Monticello tour.
He did. It's coming in again. John Adams and TJ both died on the same day. Carol Thorpe.
What's the state that has produced the most presidents?
It's got to be Virginia, right?
Okay, then how many?
Judah knows that answer, don't you, Judah? I thought this was going to.
I'm going to guess 8.
8 is correct.
Can you
Boom.
name all 8?
Hell no.
Well, we can name.
Not
some.
without looking them up.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
name all 8 either. Can you name all 8?
No.
Didn't you have Charlottesville trivia that you were going to try to stump us on? Isn't that when we saw each other in the squash racquetball courts? You said you were going to bring the Charlottesville
I
trivia?
did say I was going to bring from Charlottesville trivia, but then I changed it all to 4th of July trivia.
Okay. You love the escalator question.
The escalator question. Yeah, ask it again. Let's see
Well,
if anyone's
you
paying
guys
attention
know
last time.
the
No, but ask it to
Do
the.
you know the escalator trivia question?
I don't even know what you're talking about. No.
Where is the only escalator located in the city of Charlottesville? The only escalator in the city of Charlottesville.
If you know it, don't say it. It's a great question.
Where's the only, for those that are watching, where's the only escalator located in the city of Charlottesville? Quinton, do you know this?
I'm going to tell you my wrong answer. I'm going to say the airport, but I know it's wrong.
And then the response to that is?
Because the airport's not in the city.
Not in the city,
it's
yeah.
Mount County. Do you know where the only escalator is? This is a stumper question. But once you hear it, you're like, oh, shit, that's right. The only escalator in the city of Charlottesville. All right, we got people putting
I
it
have
on
no
the
idea.
feed that got it.
I have no idea.
Should I say?
Yeah, tell us.
Michael's in Barracks Road.
Everybody's been
Oh,
there.
that's right.
Everybody's been there. You
I know.
just
Right,
forget
right.
it.
I'm not a big arts and crafts person.
What?
Yeah.
No?
I like
Have you ridden
containers.
that escalator?
I like containers, though, so I have been there for that,
Yeah.
but I totally forgot about that.
Noel, your assistant says where I recently bought some dye kits, tie-dye kits.
We tie-dyed some Clayborne shirts. Check out the Clayborne page. Yeah, last weekend we tie-dyed some Clayborne shirts. They came out wicked. My wife, of course, did an amazing job because she folded them for like an hour.
Michael's is right. Barracks Road.
Interesting.
You got one?
What trivia question, Quentin? You have another
What
one, right?
percentage of land in the United States is federally owned?
Ooh,
I have no idea. That is
national parks. I'm gonna say
That is a brutal.
10%.
He says 10?
Yeah.
I would say. I hope it's not 10%. I'll go 5.
20%.
20%
Wow.
of land. Logan.
It's about
Claylo.
It's about 650 million acres.
Is most of it for national parks and national forests? What's?
It's gotta be.
National Parks, Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah. Okay.
Alaska's a huge chunk of it, part of that great real estate deal.
Logan Claylo got Michael's in Barracks Road. She's a realtor. Carol Thorpe says Adams' dying last words were, quote, Jefferson lives, not knowing TJ had passed only hours earlier. Wow.
It's amazing.
So we're still on the imperial system. We haven't moved to the metric system. How many countries are still on the imperial system with us? How many total?
2.
What do you say?
I would say it's got to be on one hand. So I would say, he said 2, I'll give it 5.
It's 3.
Okay.
Who are they? It's us and
Is England on the imperial system? No, they're
Canada?
not.
No, Canada is not. Is it a North American country?
I would be astonished if anybody knew who they were.
Okay.
It's Liberia
Yeah.
and Burma
And why are they still on it?
because
They're way behind.
Is that why?
yeah.
Why are we still on it?
For all the same reasons, there's no broadband access in the middle of Albemarle County, and we have housing issues because we just can't stomach change.
James Watson says, Quinton, the U.S. military owns millions of acres of land as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair point, James.
Yeah. So why do you think
That's where they hide the UFOs and the aliens.
Should ask if my wife's watching. She probably knows why we're still in the Imperial. I'm guessing it's legacy systems. You create legacy systems.
Oh, Alex is still watching. She said 20%. She got it right.
Yeah,
And then
Alex.
she said, boom, exclamation point. Because
Yeah.
she knew she got it right. Alex likes getting things right. Alex, what was the question we should ask?
Yeah, Alex, why are we still in the imperial system? I think she builds satellites, and I think they do a lot of them in imperial units.
Judah, do you know that? You know a lot of good trivia stuff of why we're still in the imperial system.
I do wonder if it's a software thing.
I think
Is it a...
Okay, we're stubborn Americans.
Well, I think it's difficult to transition. We were
Is
founded
it the
with
same
imperial
reason that
units.
we're still on daylight savings time?
Is it the same reason we eat $2.3 billion of encased meat per year?
Oh my gosh.
You're not a fan of the encased meat, I see.
I just think it's interesting on the things we can't fund, and we can spend $2.3 billion on a hot dog.
I mean, he puts it in perspective that way.
That is wild. Choice.
We do it a little bit at a time, but,
Yeah.
what's the country's largest private employer? Who is the country's largest private employer?
It's got to be the military of some capacity, right?
Private employer.
Okay. Well, so you don't count all those government contractors?
Is it Amazon?
No, because they're single companies, and so they don't add up.
Is it Amazon?
I think that would be a good guess for me as well. Amazon?
Walmart,
Walmart, yeah.
2.2 million people.
Yeah.
Alex says, I would assume legacy systems, it would take a lot of work to change everything over.
And you would never fully change over because you have...
And who's the people that certify the gas pumps? They'd
Ja-
have to change all of that.
James Watson says Walmart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
James got it.
Very nice.
James got
1 out of 8 people have worked for this company. 1 out of 8 workers in the United States
In their
have worked
entire
for
life?
this company at some point in their lifetime.
What do you say? McDonald's or Walmart?
Probably something fast food related, right?
Yeah.
McDonald's?
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Good,
McDonald's, yeah.
good job.
Yeah.
How about how the university and the townies were late for TJ's funeral because they were beefing about who was going to lead the funeral procession? That happened in Charlottesville.
Oldest 4th of July celebration in the country. Where is the oldest 4th of July celebration?
Wouldn't it have to be in Philadelphia if they were the first?
Not.
Oldest continuous?
Yeah. I
Oldest
think
continuous celebration?
It is credited with having the oldest 4th of July celebration. Heck, maybe they celebrated in 1776. It is Bristol, Rhode Island.
Really?
Seems like a
Interesting.
weird place, right? I look at it. I'm happy to be fact checked, but that's what.
So if
The little internet thing
$12,000
said.
is the median cost of a student, states and counties go up or down, what state has the most consistently above average funding per student across all of its counties?
Gotta be in the Northeast, right?
You guys are bringing brutally difficult trivia questions.
Where would you
state?
think it is?
I don't know. I mean, you would know.
You've
this
only
well.
got 50
You
choices.
would know this better than me. I'm responding to the comments. Alex is making good comments here, and Eric LaFontaine is
Massachusetts.
piggybacking on your wife's
New York
comment.
State.
New York State. Okay.
York State,
You would.
right.
I think
It's
it would
in
have to
New
be the Northeast.
Who established the first ever non-religious public university?
First ever non-religious.
Was it Thomas Jefferson?
He was a founding father.
You would say what? UVA?
Yeah.
I mean, William and Mary was before UVA, wasn't it? Or did we say you proved that was not the case, right?
Well, no. William and Mary was before UVA, but it was not the oldest. Harvard is the oldest.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Harvard
religious,
is- yeah.
very religious.
I mean, William and Mary?
Let's go, William and Mary.
Ben Franklin, became the University of Pennsylvania.
University
Penn.
of Penn, okay.
Yeah.
UPenn.
Huh. That's a good one.
It was the first medical school in the country. Medicine and
Hell of a
nursing
business
was all
school.
by apprenticeship. All the other universities in the country up to that point were religious in nature. And if you went to go into church service, you paid no tuition. You went into a life of servitude. And
Neil says go Tribe, so we said William and Mary. But
Yeah.
it was Penn.
it was Penn.
It was Penn. All right, this man's got 3 minutes left. I would love to hear what he's going to do and what you guys are going to do on the 4th over this weekend.
I will be in Scotts Valley, California, celebrating with my cousin Darren Pashota, who's a fan of the show. Scotts Valley is a tiny little town above Santa Cruz, and they have a little parade. So we'll be there celebrating with my cousins.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. QB, are you still doing the birthday celebrations over the 4th of July weekend?
It's no longer my birth month.
Okay.
I gotta move on.
Jude, he had 9 birthday celebrations.
We're having sort of a neighborhood block party barbecue thing on Saturday. Got a
fun.
bike ride on Saturday morning, maybe.
You've been biking a lot.
I've noticed that.
That's great.
Not a lot, actually. Comparatively, almost not at all. Trying to not plan out too much more of it, honestly.
J. Mill, what about you?
I am going to play in a pickleball tournament.
I want to play pickleball. Can you invite me to a game at some point?
I can.
Okay.
I can. I got a pickleball tournament going tomorrow. A parade on Sunday. And then some pool time. Maybe a tennis tournament on Sunday.
Now, does Lauren play pickleball or?
Lauren plays pickleball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can't get her on the racquetball course, but you can get her on pickleball.
She plays pickleball, not necessarily with me, but she plays pickleball. She enjoys that. She's my wife, who is watching the program. So a bunch of racket sports, which you know I love.
Yeah,
A parade, and then some pool time.
that sounds great.
Yeah. You, per usual, were fantastic. You're very good
Thank
in
you
this think on your feet setting, especially this show. This, for in an hour and change, was anything goes. That's big font right there, my friend. On that.
I'm old.
That's
You can read it from across the room. I'm not going to turn it towards the cameras because you all could read my
I can
text.
read it from over here.
I'm joining him. I got reading glasses too. That way I
Do
can
you have
read
the big
everything.
font on your phone?
No.
Not yet. Soon.
Yeah, I have enormous font on the phone.
Quinton Beckham, this was fun.
Thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. Quentin
And
and I
thank
had
you
an
for having
idea,
us.
and then we pitched to you last time.
Okay.
We should do Real Talk After Hours.
Real talk after hours.
Yeah, use that bar. Yeah.
A happy hour real talk.
Us
Yeah.
on camera with microphones while doing happy hour?
You know,
Yeah.
it may be the last show you ever do, but it could be a lot of fun.
But you know I'm all for that. The question is, will you guys do that?
100%.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you want to
Yes.
do that?
Yes, but we'll have to change this from a pretend bar to a real one.
No, but have you seen the bar lately? It looks pretty good.
It does. And
Ian Glomsky from Vitae Spirits gave us 2 new bottles.
Ian's great.
You got
Yeah.
2 bottles of rum from St. Martin. I got a gift of Angel's Envy from a client. It looks not
the
bad.
St. Martin rum's really good. I don't like rum, but
Okay.
but
But I
I
got
got some
bourbons.
too. It's
I
really
have some
good.
very nice bourbon. I was in Kentucky for a bachelor party last week. I brought some very nice single barrel bourbon back, which I'll bring. We can drink it on the show.
Can you put the camera on the bar? The bar, you got to admit,
Oh.
the bar's looking as good as it's ever looked.
It could become real drunk talk.
That could be dangerous.
I mean, dude.
I'm not streaming that
This
to
is
any
like my
pages
dream
I'm a
right
part
here.
of.
I
Yeah.
have no problem doing this. at
Judah
all.
might have to up the
I
delay.
have no problem doing this at all.
Yeah.
We got to get Lee Elberson out. He's fantastic work. Oh, the camera is going to the bar right there. Guys, for those that are still watching, look at the screen now, and you may see the I Love CVille Network bar, where a third of our guests rip a shot before they come on the show to settle their nerves.
If you're nervous before coming on the show, it's probably a great thing. I've never done it.
These 2 guys are never nervous, so they've never had
It's
to
just
do
the
that.
4 of us and Liza.
Yeah.
That's what I say to folks. All right, we're out of here. Philip Andrew Hamilton running for state delegate at 12:30 on the I Love CVille show. Thank you for joining us. Lee Elberson's A+, Quinton Beckham's A+, Judah Weckauer, and my name is Jerry Miller. Real Talk presented by Yes Realty Partners. Have a good morning, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dudes, very good. Very good. Very good. That was fun.
It was so random.
Man, but that was also